We live in a world where we have to grow up. People in this business fall by the wayside because we forget that all of us ultimately answer to people.
The internet is going crazy right now. Stephen A. Smith just dropped some eye-opening hints about why his longtime First Take co-host, Molly Qerim, suddenly walked away from ESPN after nearly 20 years at the network. And trust me, the details paint a way messier picture than anyone ever imagined. Let's break it down, because this was the exit nobody saw coming. On September 16th, 2025, the sports media world was rocked to its core. One of the most shocking departures in ESPN history sent shockwaves across the industry. After almost 2 decades with the network and 10 years as the backbone moderator of First Take, Molly Qerim stunned everyone by announcing she was out. Fans were floored, colleagues blindsided, and even Stephen A. himself looked like he'd just been hit with a curveball.
Molly Qerim exiting ESPN, exiting First Take quite abruptly, one might say. Last night, Austin Karp of Sports Business Journal reported that Molly Qerim was exiting at the end of the year, but it turns out she is exiting effective immediately.
What makes this even wilder isn't just the timing, it's how it all went down. Picture this. On Monday, September 15th, Molly was on set like nothing was wrong, moderating debates with her trademark calm and control. Less than 24 hours later, she was gone. Not a break, not a vacation. Completely gone from the network she called home for 19 years.
Normally, our friend Molly Qerim would greet you. However, Molly announced last night she will be departing from ESPN. She's hosted First Take for 10 years and elevated the show with her grace, her expertise, her incomparable kindness. She's been an enormous part of our success for a decade. Not only did she keep me and many others in line, she did it with dignity and class and kindness, to say the least.
At first, Sports Business Journal reported that Molly was planning to leave at the end of the year. A clean exit, right? But then came the twist. That same night, Molly took to Instagram and dropped a statement that flipped the whole story upside down.
We'll miss her and wish her every blessing on her future. I personally am grateful to her for her friendship, and I will miss spending every weekday morning with her right by my side.
Her post started with the shocking words, "The news came out earlier than I intended." Right there, it was clear.
Last night, she abruptly resigned as the host of the show. And to say that I'm quite sad about it is an understatement. Molly is a friend. Molly is a coworker. Molly is somebody that I have leaned on many occasions in the past, as she has done when it comes to me.
And then he dropped the bombshell.
And a lot of times, some of these things happen, and it's just uncomfortable to see. The details, quite frankly, are none of y'all business. But it's not as if I know all the details. It was a contract negotiation that was going on.
Something behind the scenes went sideways. This wasn't some polished farewell tour with highlight reels and goodbye speeches. This was abrupt, raw, and messy.
But we all make decisions that we deem to be in our best interest for whatever reason. And that story is for her to tell. Do I have an idea? Of course I do. Am I going to share it with you? No. Because again, that's her story to tell.
An immediate resignation that left everyone at ESPN scrambling to figure out what just happened. And the impact was instant. When First Take aired Tuesday morning, viewers were stunned to see Stephen A. opening the show solo. No Molly, no warning, just Stephen looking visibly shaken delivering what felt like a heartfelt but strangely cryptic goodbye. He said she'd be missed, wished her luck, but his words left more questions than answers. And here's where it gets spicy. Pay attention to his phrasing. Stephen A. made a point to emphasize that Molly had announced last night. That detail makes it crystal clear. He had no idea this was coming. This wasn't a months-long buildup. This was Molly pulling the plug fast. But the real bombshell dropped later that day. On his Sirius XM podcast, The Stephen A. Smith Show, Stephen opened up in a way that had fans' jaws hitting the floor. He admitted there was more to Molly's sudden exit than anyone was letting on. But then hit the brakes, saying it wasn't his place to reveal it. Now, this is where the drama hits another level. Stephen A. Smith practically admitted that he knows way more than he's saying, but instead of spilling it, he's keeping quiet. And that silence has fans going absolutely wild with theories. The most striking part of his response? How hard he leaned on the fact that Molly's resignation was sudden and completely unplanned. This wasn't some smooth transition or carefully staged farewell tour. Even ESPN's own president of content, Burke Magnus, had to admit the timing threw them off. In his words, the one thing that was unexpected was the timing of all this. She put out a statement because there was a report on it, so it kind of got out of our respective controls translation. ESPN wasn't ready for Molly's bombshell either. It exploded before they could control the narrative. To really understand why her exit hit so hard, you gotta look at what Molly Qerim actually meant to First Take and ESPN as a whole. She wasn't just a face on TV, she was a force. Joining back in 2006, she started on digital platforms, but by 2015, she had secured her spot as the permanent moderator of First Take. And from there, the show only grew bigger. The numbers don't lie. First Take became ESPN's highest rated studio show, pulling in over 500,000 viewers an episode and even earning a spot on Sports Business Journal's top 25 studio shows list in 2024. Just last year, the show hit record highs, the most watched year ever, racking up monster ratings on TV and a staggering 250 million views on YouTube. But Molly's value wasn't only in the numbers. Her steady, sharp, and inclusive presence balanced Stephen A.'s firecracker energy. She fact-checked in real time, kept debates from spiraling into chaos, and gave the show credibility when things got heated. Fans and critics agreed. Molly's professionalism made the show work.
Molly was going through a contract negotiation, obviously, and that was not going well, obviously, because Molly wasn't getting what she wanted. What did Molly want? Molly wanted to do other things at the network, which included hosting her own show. Let me land on my feet within the network, still be at the worldwide leader, and do my thing. Now, that wasn't happening.
She also broke barriers in an industry where women are still fighting for fair representation. Her leadership as a visible, respected female anchor in a male-dominated space gave First Take an edge that fans connected with. Add to that her Emmy win back in 2008 for her fantasy football coverage, and you've got a career built on versatility, excellence, and respect. And of course, her on-air chemistry with Stephen A. became legendary.
When he signs off on you, when he signs for you, you get what you want. But guess what? There's a flip to it as well. When he doesn't sign off on you, when he doesn't sign for you, you don't get what you want.
For a decade, the two crafted a perfect rhythm. His loud, explosive takes offset by her cool, measured responses. She could challenge him, redirect him, and even bring humor when the show was getting too intense. Their back and forth wasn't just entertaining. It defined sports debate TV for a generation, which is exactly why her exit feels so unreal. There were zero red flags leading up to it. No reports of behind-the-scenes drama, no whispers of tension, no gradual fading from the spotlight. First Take wasn't struggling. It was thriving. And yet, one moment, Molly was right there in the chair, and the very next, she was gone. All she left behind? A cryptic Instagram post, a few carefully worded lines from Stephen A., and a cloud of unanswered questions that only made the mystery bigger. The aftermath was just as shocking as the exit itself. ESPN quickly confirmed Molly would never return to First Take, fast-tracking her departure from what was supposed to be a year-end farewell into an immediate, clean break. And that timing raised some serious eyebrows. Here was ESPN's flagship debate show, peaking in ratings, dominating online, and sitting at the center of sports culture, suddenly losing one of its pillars overnight, with zero prep or explanation. For a network that prides itself on carefully choreographed talent transitions, this wasn't just messy, it was chaos. One thing became crystal clear. This wasn't a friendly parting of ways. This wasn't just about a contract ending quietly. Something big broke down inside those negotiations. So big that a seasoned pro like Molly Qerim decided it was better to walk out immediately rather than ride out the rest of her deal.
You're working at a network where Mina Kimes is making way more money than you, and Mina Kimes is the number what on what show?
And what was happening behind those cameras, even more explosive. This wasn't just about leaving a TV show. This was about money, about power, and about a negotiation that spun so far off the rails, it ended in a storm. Let's talk about the contract wars. Stephen A. Smith locked in a monster extension in 2024, reportedly over $100 million for 5 years. That deal made him not just ESPN's biggest star, but one of the highest paid personalities in all of sports media. Meanwhile, reports suggest Molly's paycheck was around $500,000 annually. Do the math. That's about a 40-to-1 salary gap between the two co-hosts of the same show. Not a gap, a canyon. Insiders say that disparity was at the very heart of Molly's frustration. But here's where it gets juicy. This wasn't just about money. According to former ESPN insider Marcellus Wiley, who worked at the network for over a decade and knew Molly during her rise, she wasn't only asking for a raise. She wanted career growth. She wanted her own platform. She wanted recognition for her decade of holding down live debates during some of the most controversial sports moments in modern history. And ESPN, according to Wiley, they shut nearly all of it down. No to the pay bump, no to expanded opportunities, no to real elevation beyond her moderator role. Imagine a talent who held her own while moderating explosive debates on LeBron's team moves, NFL protest controversies, and countless high-pressure moments. Suddenly being told she wasn't worth more than the role she already had. That rejection cut deeper than just money. It was about respect. It was about power dynamics in a workplace where Stephen A. was given the star treatment, while Molly, despite being a visible co-host for 10 years, reportedly got boxed in. That imbalance, insiders say, was the powder keg that set this entire situation off.
One of the worst kept secrets in the business is that they have a good relationship. They don't, right? They kind of tired on each other, etc. Not gonna go into all the messy details, but the point is they weren't cool with each other, to the point someone you work with for 10 years, you don't even mention them when you're gone.
Molly's role made her invaluable to the success of First Take. But Marcellus Wiley didn't stop there. His theory takes things to a whole new level of explosive. Wiley suggests that Stephen A. Smith's influence inside ESPN wasn't just big, it was decisive. In his words, Stephen A. had become an unofficial kingmaker at the network, a man with the power to make or break careers depending on who he chose to back. And according to Wiley, Stephen A. did not use that clout to help Molly get what she wanted. Instead, when it came time for her to push for better pay and bigger opportunities, his support was noticeably absent.
Point is, she's seeing not only people getting paid, and none of them really on the #1 show. Think about it, Malika's show, always struggling in terms of who's going to be on there. Oh, the cast is not it. Oh, they haven't got their traction yet, but she getting paid. Mina Kimes, a lot of people criticizing her. At the same time, she getting paid. And then you, Molly, I'm #2 on the #1 show we got, and I can't get none.
There's evidence that fuels this theory. Reports show Stephen A.'s blockbuster contract didn't just make him ESPN's highest paid star. It gave him serious say in show decisions, including casting and on-air talent linked to First Take. Industry insiders have long pointed out that Stephen A.'s voice carries huge weight on who gets hired, promoted, or sidelined. And when one personality becomes this central to a network's strategy, they often gain off-the-books power that stretches far beyond what's written in their contract. So the picture painted is this. Stephen A. has used his influence in the past to elevate people at ESPN. He's vouched for some, cleared paths for others, but Molly Qerim? According to Wiley's breakdown, she wasn't one of the names he went to bat for. And that selective support raises big questions about what criteria he uses when choosing who deserves his backing. The timing also lines up with something deeper going on. ESPN exec Burke Magnus confirmed that Molly and the network had initially agreed on a year-end transition. She'd step away from First Take, but move into new opportunities at ESPN. The kind of career growth she had earned after more than a decade of carrying the network's most high-profile debates. There were talks of hosting her own shows, branching into new assignments, and expanding her presence across ESPN's lineup.
I'm not talking about Molly here, but I'm watching, and I've been watching over the last several years, people in this business fall by the wayside because we forget that all of us ultimately answer to people. We don't get to define our own value. We don't get to define our own worth.
On paper, it looked like the perfect next chapter. But somewhere in those final negotiations, the plan collapsed. Instead of a graceful exit into bigger roles, Molly was suddenly boxed into what insiders describe as a blunt, take it or leave it offer. And she chose to leave immediately. So the burning question becomes, what changed? Why did a plan for smooth career advancement suddenly turn into a messy overnight resignation? Multiple insiders say the answer lies in broken trust and simmering resentment. After years of driving ratings, balancing Stephen A.'s fire, and being one of the few strong female voices on the biggest stage in sports media, Molly reportedly felt undervalued and disrespected. And when you compare her situation to the broader ESPN pay structure, with stars like Stephen A. pulling 9-figure deals while she remained locked at a fraction of that, the imbalance becomes impossible to ignore. This is where the whole situation exposes a much bigger problem, a glaring inequity in how ESPN values its talent. Think about it. Molly Qerim, co-host of the network's Crown Jewel morning show, was apparently making less than analysts with smaller roles on less important programs. How does that make sense? She was the one keeping ESPN's flagship studio show on track day after day, balancing egos, fact-checking live, and making sure chaos didn't completely take over. Yet people with far easier jobs were pocketing more money. That kind of imbalance is guaranteed to spark frustration. And it did. Now, add in the bigger picture. ESPN has been under financial pressure for years. Cord cutting, layoffs, and budget cuts hitting the company hard. In that climate, some execs may have looked at Molly and decided she was replaceable. But here's the kicker. While cutting corners on her contract, ESPN was handing out monster paydays elsewhere. If they could shell out over $20 million a year for Stephen A. Smith, it's hard to buy the excuse that they couldn't give Molly a bump that was tiny compared to those numbers. The contrast is impossible to ignore. Stephen A.'s extension, smooth sailing, 9 figures, no drama. Molly's talks, stalled, denied, and ultimately blown up over far smaller asks. The message? Keep Stephen A. happy at all costs, but everyone else is expendable. For Molly, who spent a decade building First Take into ESPN's most powerful debate show, that had to feel like both an insult and a betrayal. And it gets darker once you peel back the layers. If Wiley's theory is right, that Stephen A. had become the network's kingmaker, then advancement wasn't about performance or ratings or even loyalty. It was about who you had in your corner. That kind of power structure creates a toxic culture where talent can grind for years, only to have their careers stalled because they don't have the right ally backing them up. Wiley has been especially vocal about what he calls the hidden beef between Molly and Stephen A., a simmering tension that the public never saw, but insiders whispered about. His insights paint a picture of a work environment far more dysfunctional than the polished on-screen chemistry suggested. And that's the bombshell. For years, fans believed the First Take dynamic was smooth, even legendary. Stephen A.'s explosive energy paired with Molly's cool control. But what's coming out now flips that image on its head. Behind the cameras, the relationship may have been way more complicated and way more fractured than anyone realized. For years, fans thought they were watching real chemistry. Molly Qerim and Stephen A. Smith trading takes with mutual respect and sharp banter. But according to Marcellus Wiley, that dynamic wasn't as authentic as it seemed. He claims much of it was performative, a polished professional act designed to hide the growing tension simmering behind the cameras. Think about it. These two spent nearly a decade together, day in and day out, daily shows, big events, promo tours, production meetings. They were practically work spouses for 10 years straight. And to now hear that so much of that partnership was more facade than friendship, That points to a level of dysfunction way deeper than just clashing personalities. And the most explosive piece? Wiley's allegations about ESPN's culture itself, especially how female talent is treated compared to men. He paints a picture of systemic undervaluing, where women's contributions were consistently downplayed or dismissed. For Molly, it meant watching other women at the network, some with smaller roles, land-based contracts, and more opportunities, while she, the face of ESPN's top-rated studio show, was stuck being lowballed. The gender dynamics here can't be ignored. ESPN, according to insiders, seemed comfortable paying women well in certain roles, but not for the kind of high-profile daily hosting gig that Molly mastered. Imagine the psychological toll. Not only feeling underpaid compared to male colleagues, but also watching women with less visible roles get better treatment. It sent a brutal message about how the network valued her future. When it came time for her renewal, the disrespect became blatant. While official figures never dropped, multiple sources say ESPN's offer was well below what Molly was asking. And even more insulting when compared to contracts other on-air talent were landing. And this wasn't just about money. Molly had built First Take into a cultural powerhouse, steering it through some of the most volatile sports debates of the last decade. Her skill set wasn't just rare, it was irreplaceable. But here's where the story twists even harder. After Molly's abrupt departure, Stephen A. Smith's own behavior started raising eyebrows. His farewell was emotional but vague, his podcast cryptic, and then came the timing of his so-called business lectures. Just days after Molly left, Stephen A. went on air preaching about leverage, hierarchy, and knowing your place in contract negotiations. He never said Molly's name, but the subtext was loud and clear. To many observers, it sounded like a thinly veiled jab, a warning about what happens when someone pushes too hard against the power structure at ESPN. It was passive-aggressive, but effective, sending a message while keeping plausible deniability. In short, while Molly was walking away feeling undervalued, Stephen A. was subtly framing the narrative, reminding everyone who really holds the power at the network. Stephen A. can insist he was speaking in general terms about the business, but let's be real. Everyone knows those comments were aimed straight at Molly's situation. And now, the rumor mill is working overtime about her next move. Word is, Molly might already have a major offer on the table from Fox Sports, reportedly worth around $2 million a year. That's nearly 4 times what she was making at ESPN, and a clear sign that the industry recognizes her true value. If those reports are true, the move would be huge. Not only would it give Molly the respect and paycheck she's been fighting for, but it would also set her up as direct competition against First Take. Imagine that. Molly going from the face of ESPN's flagship show to a rival that could seriously chip away at its ratings and cultural clout. ESPN might have just let one of its biggest assets walk straight into the arms of its competitor. Meanwhile, ESPN now faces the challenge of replacing her. They've already announced a 30 to 45-day audition process to test new hosts, but insiders aren't convinced anyone can truly step into Molly's role. Her professionalism, her balance, her ability to control Stephen A.'s explosive energy, That's not something you can just manufacture overnight. And here's the real question. Who will ESPN choose? Will they bring in someone bold who can actually challenge Stephen A. and give the show a new edge? Or will they play it safe and hire someone who simply defers to him, keeping the status quo intact? What do you think? Did ESPN make a mistake letting Molly walk away? And will Fox Sports turn her into their next big star? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.